Hello, this is Tate Chamberlin with I Am Interchange. In this latest podcast, we have Kareen Erbe, a local permaculturist from Bozeman, Montana. She speaks to the value of sustainability of food production, yes, gardening and farming. As you will hear, water plays an important role, and there are apocalyptic visions should we mismanage the sacred resource of water. Hey Kareen, how's it going?
Hi Tate, I'm doing well.
What's your history? Why do you care about water?
Well, I'm a gardener, and I'm really interested in permaculture, and permaculture is basically a design approach for sustainable human habitat that's rooted in the observation of natural systems. So I'm always looking for ways of how do you produce more food, and of course, you can't produce food without water.
Is water a human right?
Absolutely, yeah.
What do you think of just groundwater rights and kind of the history of water ownership?
I suppose I understand why there are certain groundwater rights or water rights for properties, but there's kind of this larger philosophical understanding that I feel that people need to have around the commons and what is necessary for all human beings, right? I mean, all of us have a right to water. We need it to survive. We need it to live. And you think about people in developing countries who don't have access to clean water. And yet maybe corporations in those same countries are tapping into their water.
Like Coke and Nestle.
Right.
What do you think of all that?
I mean, there's an injustice there, obviously. Again, it's that the haves and the have-nots. Why can those large corporations come into a country and tap into good water and use it to then sell, convert it into something that is ultimately unhealthy for people and get huge profits out of that?
Will we run out of water? Drinkable water?
Not to be apocalyptic, yes, there are arguments that we will, right?
What do you think?
Depends on the day. It depends on how hopeful I am on that day, right? You can't often rely on people just on principle alone to make a decision, to conserve more water, for example. So if you have, say, now the city of Bozeman has a whole water conservation initiative, right, that gives people incentive. So that's one way to go about it, right? But then you also, if you started, and another incentive, a way to give people incentives, of course, is that they pay for city water, right? So there's an incentive there. And I think a lot of it does come down to, I hate to say it, right? But it comes down to the pocketbook. If people are affected and have to pay for something, or if they're taxed for something, then they're more likely to change.
So we're on a well here at Blunderbuss.
Right.
You could make the case that the water that we flushed on the toilet goes into the septic, and then it goes, 98% of it, they might say, goes back into our leach field that goes back into the well water.
Right.
So does it matter? Does using fresh water on a well to flush the toilet matter?
Well, it matters in the sense of, and we have the same setup at our place, right? But I think about it all the time, right? I'm a mellow, let it, whatever. If it's yellow, let it mellow kind of gal, right? I think it just matters in terms of the ethic that you take towards water. Water is sacred, right? And I think most of us don't realize that, right? We take it for granted that we can just have a glass of water, right? But it is everything. If we don't have water, we can't feed ourselves. There needs to be a reality check in Bozeman. Bozeman's growing, right? We don't have enough water to service, or we won't have enough water.
If we keep growing, we're supposed to grow by like 50% in the next 20 years or something.
Yeah, I forget what the stat is, but it's significant. It's more than maybe we can plan for well, right? It's growing too quickly where it seems as if the city can't kind of necessarily plan for it, because of course you do have developers that are coming in and trying to make a buck on land.
What made you start caring so much to start broken ground permaculture and doing your own thing?
Well, I think, I used to be an activist in the human rights social justice field, and spent a lot of time in Latin America, spent a lot of time in communities that don't have access to clean water, spent a lot of time in communities whose people used to be subsistence farmers and that are now farming for export, right? And the effects of globalization. And so permaculture was providing positive solutions. Like, here's a solution. So I have a problem with people that aren't, for example, if they're not environmentally conscious or something like that. Well, you just can't, be mad at people for not being environmentally conscious and say, well, this is wrong and what you're doing is wrong. You have to provide some kind of alternative,
Do you think the future is global or tribal?
Well, no. So I think it's both, right? I think it's relocalizing communities and economies, while at the same time we do have this World Wide Web, right? We have this ability to communicate and see examples across the world and be inspired.
Anything else you want to add?
Only that, I think the bigger question is, how do you get people to care? How do you change? How do you affect change?
Hear more from Kareen and other panelists at the I Am Interchange debate, Is Water a Human Right? August 29th at the filling station in Bozeman, Montana. This episode was produced by Chris Griffin, Tyson Lunn, and me, Tate Chamberlin. Our sponsors include Mountain Time Arts, Humanities Montana, the City of Bozeman, the Governor's Office of Economic Development, Montucky Cold Snacks, the Nova Cafe, 10 Directions, Headframe Spirits, Zocalo Coffee House, Sola Cafe, Whistle Pig Korean, Shank Construction, the Pride Foundation, Loken Productions, and Blunderbuss. If you like our podcast, don't forget to support our Patreon page at www.patreon.com/I Am Interchange.